two guests. Our moderator tonight is Sam Flancher, who is a film programmer who's worked in Chicago for over a decade. He currently works programming international feature films for the Chicago International Film Festival after spending 5 years at the head of their short film program. He has served on film juries, both nationally and internationally, and was named one of New City's Film 50 in both 2019 and 2022. And our esteemed guest, Pedro Costa, born in Lisbon in December 1959, began studying film with Antonio Reis at the Lisbon Film School, and later worked as an assistant director for João Botelho and João Cesar Monteiro, making his first film, The Blood, which premiered at the Venice Film Festival in 1989. Since then, he's directed 6 feature films, as well as a number of documentaries and shorts. His cinematic language, forged over decades of collaboration with the now displaced inhabitants of the Fontainhas neighborhood in Lisbon, embraces stillness, ambiguity, collaboration, and a deep respect for human dignity, placing him in a tradition of rigorous yet compassionate cinema that, for us at least, represents the film medium at its best. I will not enumerate the many distinctions and awards that his work has enjoyed at festivals and venues around the world, but it's truly a privilege for us at the Block and at Northwestern to be able to join these venues in sharing his remarkable work with an audience. And we thank Pedro for being here, so if you could please join me in welcoming Sam Flancher and Pedro Costa.
Well, thank you, Michael and Malia and Eric and everyone for putting this wonderful program together, and thank you to the Black Cinema. And of course, thank you, Pedro, for being here with us and sharing this exceptional film. I'm going to ask just a couple of questions to get things rolling, but we do want to hear from you and we want your questions as well. So while we're kind of decompressing after the film, think of these questions while we're talking, and we'll have an audience Q&A portion. So Pedro, you made this film after Ossos, which was a much more maybe traditional production set in the same neighborhood. This film is, in Vanda's room, is much more pared down. You're shooting digitally. I'd love if you could sort of go back 20 years or over 20 years ago and sort of walk us through your mindset for as you approached making this film, sort of eschewing the traditional filmmaking.
Well, yes, before this film I did, it's like a Lubitsch film called To Be or Not to Be, as soon as I start speaking. Have you seen To Be or Not to Be? I had done a few films before in a more conventional way, production with a large crew of collaborators, and so I did, and I was not very happy with not with the films, but the way, the experience of making the films. So the shootings were always very painful. But in fact, they are always very painful in a way, but painful. It can be painful because you're searching for things, and it's work, and it's a positive thing, but it can be painful in a very negative way. It means you're surrounded by people that are not really there to help you, and there's a number of situations in filmmaking, as you all know, that are very perverse. I mean, filmmaking is a very nasty business, very perverse and very corrupt and very belongs to a. It now belongs to a kind of organization, economical and ideological frame that is corrupt and is capitalist. So I was not very happy with that, with those shootings, and I thought it was my problem. In fact, I thought it was me not knowing how to work, direct actors, and do what you have to do when you do a film. I mean, if you see the photographs of directors doing a film, it's always like that. I couldn't do that, and I don't know how to do that. So there was, after this film you mentioned, which was shot in the same place, and this place is at that time in Lisbon, there were a lot of the outskirts of the city, and because I come from a country in Europe that was, my country was the country who invented slavery. It's not France or Spain or England, it was Portugal. Slavery and a lot more things. We had an immense empire until 50 years ago. Next 25 of April, it was there was a revolution in my country in 74, 50 years ago, and we were colonizing a lot of Africa. Angola, which is huge, Mozambique, Cape Verde, from which a lot of people in this film come, Guinea, India, most of India, Macau in China, Timor. So we had a lot of provinces, like we call them, and I've been always, since I was born and living in this city, I was used to see a mixed city, a very, almost, I wouldn't say black, but mixed city. It was, so I think in the back of my head always had this idea of going to see abroad and see this ex-colonies, now the colonies that are. And my second film, one of the films that I'm not very happy with the shooting, the way it was produced, happy with the results, but not the way it was made. I did it in Cabo Verde, so it's 10 islands in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, in front of Senegal. And I shot there a film, and when I came back to the last day of shooting this film, which was with a very big crew, 50 or 60 people, planes and boats and things. And the last day, a lot of people in the villages where we shot gave me and some of my colleagues, but especially me, bags full of letters and messages and gifts for their relatives that were immigrants in Lisbon. The Cape Verdeans are immigrants. They are, I don't know how many millions in Boston, Rotterdam, Paris, Lisbon, and there are much less in Cabo Verde. In Cabo Verde are, I don't know, today 300,000 maybe, and there's millions all over the world. Only in Boston, there's Brockton, there's a huge community. So at that moment I began to live a little bit with this community, and when I got to Lisbon, I had this bag full of things that I had to deliver. So this is a very nice thing that happened to me, because few of my colleague filmmakers have this kind of experience, or none of them, which is finding the place, finding the ideal. Well, they had in the past. Here, I always compare this to the studios, to the old studios in Hollywood. Don't laugh, but for me it's a little bit the same thing. It's like if I found my own studio. Not the same economy, of course, not at all. It's not a factory, or it's not. It has nothing to do with the industry of cinema and something like that. But I found a studio. Studio means a workshop, almost a laboratory, something, a place where I could experiment and work what I wanted to work. And it happens that this studio had people, actors or collaborators, a lot of people. And this studio, this workshop, this place, was this neighborhood. So I got into this neighborhood one day, one night, with my bag full of letters, and I had to deliver the letters. I had learned Creole, which is the language that is spoken in the, like, for all I mean, immigrant communities in Europe and here, what the language spoken in the house is the local, is the native language, and then there's the official language, which was Portuguese. But I learned Creole, so I spoke a little bit of Creole. That was also a sort of password to, and it was for me a kind of origin, foundation of a lot of things for me. Not only for filmmaking, for my life, for my morals, let's say. This is very pretentious, but it changed me completely. At least in the way I work, or I now work. Because I was giving these letters to mothers, fathers, brothers, and of course they forced me to stay. Now you have to drink, you have to eat. How is my son? How is my mother? And I had to tell them she's okay, she's great. She's in the film. Now I'm going to edit the film, and you'll see one day. Everybody's okay, and so very quickly I became a friend of this community. I mean, I was welcomed, and I started spending all my time there in this very, very problematic neighborhood. It was a very precarious. It was a shanty town. It was really at that time in the 90s and even before. I arrived there in '96, and it was a very problematic place at that time. It was also a market for or all sorts of things. You know, it's like this. People have to survive. So, as you saw, so I did. This is a long answer, but so I did one film there, the one before this one, and I did all the mistakes again. I had a big crew, and I had the big cinema, the big machine, the trucks, and I remember I had 4 assistant directors for me. I had nothing to say to these boys, and because I didn't know myself. I tried to do something, and I like the film still. It exists. But it was an approach. And then when I finished the film, I knew I wanted to stay there. I wanted to keep. I liked everything. I liked. It was not only this first encounter of the people, these friends that I met. It was a lot of things, even aesthetical things, the colors, the sounds, the forms. That also counts. But I loved Creole because the Creolism. It's a kind of Portuguese that was improved every day, and very inventive and very. So it was a sort of living in my country, in my city, but at the same time very far away. You know, I was living in another country, in a small neighborhood, but in another country, and it gave me a sort of distance, or